What handgun is right for me? A proper handgun selection methodology, Part 3. If you've made it this far to Part 3 of my video, then it's time to talk about calibers, shot placement, and wound channels. If you missed Parts 1 and 2, I strongly suggest that you go back and watch those two videos. You can do that by clicking on the links below in the description of this video. Before we get into handguns and calibers, let's review the science behind why people die after they have been shot. We want to talk about the 4 possible ways that a bullet or bullets can end the bad guy's life. There are only 4 ways. Number 1. Electrically. The human being is a complex biomechanical machine that is driven by electrical impulses. The thing that controls those electrical impulses is called the central nervous system, and it is comprised of the brain and the spinal cord. Functions affected by the CNS include muscle control, eyesight, breathing, and memory. Basically, this is the big computer at the center of all of the wires, nerves, leading throughout the body. If you turn off the computer, then nothing else will function. If you fire a shot that hits the spine and severs the CNS, you've disrupted the electrical system. However, you have only disrupted everything downstream from that wound. That could be a problem. If it was a center of mass, shot and you hit the subject in the spine in the middle of the back, he will not be able to use his legs, but the upper body is still connected and functional. The subject could still return fire. The 2 headshots that you are certain of killing the bad guy instantly are right through the middle of the brain, or a shot that severs the spinal column at the top of the brainstem. The shot through the middle of the brain has to destroy enough tissue as it passes through the brain in order to guarantee lights out. The shot through the top of the spinal column should hit the medulla oblongata and cerebellum. Unless you are a trained sniper or your subject is bound and kneeling in front of you ready to take some shots to the back of the head, don't even think about taking those shots. In a hectic and dynamic event like a gunfight, you are crazy or a fool or both if you think you can make headshots like these. Your target is small and will be moving, making this shot next to impossible to complete. If you have a shotgun available, then you can go ahead and take this shot. However, the preference would be for you to shoot in the middle of the upper chest to ensure a hit. Number 2. Hydraulically, or a loss of blood pressure, making the bad guy bleed to death. Once a human loses enough blood, he goes into hypovolemic shock. Hypovolemic shock is an emergency condition in which severe blood and fluid loss makes the heart unable to pump enough blood to the body. This type of shock can cause many organs to stop working. Most often, hypovolemic shock is secondary to rapid blood loss, hemorrhagic shock. The cardiovascular system initially responds to hypovolemic shock by increasing the heart rate, increasing myocardial contractility, and constricting peripheral blood vessels. This means that shots to extremities get a biological response that naturally reduces the loss of blood. A center mass hit is required to ensure this rapid loss of blood. If you aim center of mass, COM from now on, the bullet has the best chances of penetrating deeply into vital internal organs. This is also the largest area on your attacker that you have to hit. So to summarize, this is a big target and it is also effective in shutting down the attacker. Death will most likely not be instantaneous to this area. Even if the heart is fully destroyed, there is sufficient oxygen within the brain to support full, voluntary action for 10 to 15 seconds. As long as you are in fear of your life, continue to fire. Continue to fire until the threat is neutralized. 3. Psychologically. Getting a bullet wound, even a minor non-life-threatening bullet wound, can have a drastic effect on someone's motivation. Some people, when they see a little blood, and they just lose the will to fight. They give up right then and there. They may even go into shock. People can and do die from shock. In fact, this happens every day. Although this does and can happen, you shouldn't count on it. You might think that the bad guy might stop having been hurt. There is a pretty good chance if they were not bright enough to stop at the sight of an aimed gun, they are not going to stop with a mere wounding. Sometimes getting hurt just makes the subject all the more dangerous and ticked off. Your shot may have been a lethal one that the bad guy will die of eventually, but in the meantime, he wants nothing more than to take you with him, her. The famous Miami massacre in which two mortally wounded villains took on, wounded and killed several agents of the FBI is a good example of this. Then again, a wounded villain could have caught a poorly aimed slug, and all of a sudden has a vision of his mortality and throws in the towel right there on the spot. You never know. Never count on this. If you get it, fantastic. However, predicting a person's psychological response is a lot harder than predicting the winning lottery numbers. I have personally seen someone get shot to the chest, fall down, and start screaming uncontrollably. I have also seen someone take multiple hits to the chest, any one of them fatal without medical attention, continue to fight and shoot back until they died due to blood loss a couple of minutes later. 4. Structurally, the human body supports itself on a solid framework called the skeleton. Certain bones in the skeleton support the entire weight of body. I am referring to the legs, the spinal column, and the pelvis. A shot that hits and shatters one of these bones disrupts the structure and causes a collapse. Actually, making this shot is difficult as the legs are much thicker than the actual bone. There is another downside to this kind of a shot, and that is the subject may still have some fight left in him. He may not be able to stand, and probably won't be doing any tap dancing for some time, but if he is armed, he is still a threat. He just might still be able to take a shot back at you. Once again, the safest and most reliable place to shoot someone is center of mass. Keep firing until the threat is neutralized. Now that we've talked about how bullets can kill someone, let's talk about calibers. Caliber is defined as the diameter of a bore of a gun, usually expressed in hundredths or thousandths of an inch and typically written as a decimal fraction .32 or .45 caliber. Firearm caliber. Caliber is defined as the diameter of a bore of a gun, usually expressed in hundredths or thousandths of an inch and typically written as a decimal fraction, e.g., .32 or .45 caliber. Calibers can also be expressed in metric terminology, e.g., 9 mm. Most of your gun experts talk about shot placement as being the critical factor for any gun that you use, and I would tend to agree with them. That being said, you want to keep in mind our 4 ways that a person can die from being shot. The larger the caliber, the wider the wound channel produced by its impact and acceleration through the human tissue. The bigger the hole, the faster the person will bleed out. The bullet has to reach human tissue through clothing, and anything else that sits between the muzzle and the person's body. In fact, to quote from a well-known and published FBI report on bullet effectiveness, the critical wounding components for handgun ammunition, in order of importance, are penetration and permanent cavity. The bullet must penetrate sufficiently to pass through vital organs and be able to do so from less than optimal angles. For example, a shot from the side through an arm must penetrate at least 10 to 12 inches to pass through the heart. A bullet fired from the front through the abdomen must penetrate about 7 inches in a slender adult just to reach the major blood vessels in the back of the abdominal cavity. Penetration must be sufficiently deep to reach and pass through vital organs, and the permanent cavity must be large enough to maximize tissue destruction and consequent hemorrhaging. Excerpt from Special Agent Uri W. Patrick, FBI, Handgun Wounding Factors and Effectiveness. With this in mind, the recommended and most easily accessible calibers for home defense in a handgun round are the .38, 9 mm, .357 Magnum, .45 ACP, and .44 Magnum rounds. I'll also throw in the 410-shot shell if you own a Taurus Judge. Remember, a well-placed .32 or .380 is better than a .44 Magnum that misses the target, and any gun is better than none at all. Watch the first 2 parts of this video for more information, and thank you for being a Survival Review subscriber. Any gun is better than no gun. The gun that you can use effectively, can put hits on target, and that you can afford to practice, train with is the right gun for you. Even if it is only a .22 LR or .22 Magnum caliber. A 500 Magnum may be correct for Gunther, but may hurt your hand so badly that you only fire it once. What is right for you will likely not be right for someone else. Don't ever let anyone tell you what gun and caliber are right for you. Try lots of firearms before you buy one. Get training with a competent and qualified instructor, and pick a caliber that you can handle. Buy a gun that will allow you to place hits on the target and one that you can afford to become familiar with. You need to be able to manipulate the firearm, use the controls, clear any jams, and be able to find and afford ammunition to practice with. Ideally, you should buy a gun that fits all of this criteria. Good luck and pray that you never have to use it to defend your life or another's life. Remember that this is just one man's opinion and not an excuse to do something stupid. You and only you are responsible for your actions. Survival Reviews or any of the other writers affiliated with this space and its other contributors assume no responsibility for any action performed by anyone at any time. Until next time. Be safe, be healthy, and look out for the little guy.